Brill and the Dragators by Peggy Downing. Illustrated by Anne Feza. Chapter 3. Palace Dangers.
"Have you had dinner yet?"
the prince asked. Brill shook his head.
"I'm not very hungry. That cart ride took away my appetite. My stomach felt like an egg being whipped by a beater."
The prince laughed.
"I'm very hungry," he called. "Mayopor, tell the maids to bring my dinner. Bring some for Brill, too."
Prince Grossdere pointed to his small upholstered chair.
"Sit down, Brill. Where did you get those ugly clothes?" "My mother made them for me out of the wool from our sheep." "They look scratchy. I'll have my tailor measure you for some new clothes first thing in the morning."
Thank you, sir." Brill struggled to be polite, though he didn't want to replace the clothes his mother had made. He blinked away a tear as he thought of her spinning the thread, weaving the cloth, and then sewing the garments. A maid in white entered with a large tray of food and placed it on the table by the prince. A second maid came with a smaller tray and placed it on the table by Brill. He studied the food. He didn't recognize anything. Items were of different shapes and sizes, but everything was brown. One of the maids poured him a glass of brown liquid. Brill watched the prince pick up a piece of brown stuff with his gold fork and bite into it. Brill lifted his fork. His stomach fluttered as his eyes relayed the message it was about to receive something strange. Brill didn't know whether to eat or not. He didn't want to upset his uneasy stomach. As he heard the prince choking, he looked up in alarm. Mayopor, who always stayed close, ran to the prince. Prince Grossdere waved him away.
"Something went down the wrong way. I couldn't help laughing. Brill, you are so funny. The expression on your face when the maids brought your food."
Brill explained. "I've never seen food like this before. What is it, sir?" The prince laughed even louder. Brill's face grew hot, but he forced a smile, as if he too were enjoying the joke. Finally, the prince stopped laughing long enough to say,
"Tonight we're having steak cubes, carrot slices, roast potatoes, and cherry tomatoes. It's all stuff I hate, but Mother says it's good for me."
Brill didn't see any of those things on his plate, but he speared a cube with his fork and put it in his mouth. It was sweet and soft like nothing he had tasted before, but as he chewed he found a piece of meat inside the strange brown stuff. The next piece was a carrot. The brown coating gave everything a strange taste. Even the liquid in his glass had the same sweet taste. Prince Grossdere's round face broke into a wide smile.
"I hope you like chocolate."
"Is that the brown stuff?" asked Brill.
"Haven't you ever had chocolate?"
Brill shook his head. "No, sir."
"I don't suppose peasants have any way to get it. My father sends his ships to a faraway land to get cacao beans. I'd like to just eat chocolate, but Mother says I must eat other things too. It was her idea to have all my food dipped in chocolate. That's the only way I'll eat most things. Have you finished?"
"I've eaten all I can." The prince shrugged.
"You'll need to eat more, then you won't be so scrawny."
Brill wanted to point out that he wasn't scrawny unless he was being compared to someone as fat as a hippopotamus, but he didn't say anything. The prince called Mayopor.
"Ring the maids to bring dessert."
He looked at Brill.
"This is the best part."
The maids hurried and removed their trays. Another woman came in with a large dessert tray and 2 plates. Brill looked at the brown layer cake, a cream pie, and a bowl of sweets. All chocolate. Under the prince's direction, the maid cut him a large piece of cake and a huge piece of pie. The maid turned to Brill. "What would you like, sir?"
"A small piece of cake, please,"
answered Brill. The prince reached his podgy hands into the bowl.
"Here, have some sweets. You'll find nuts, cherries, caramels, all sorts of delicious things inside the chocolate."
"Thank you very much," Brill said. But he'd have swapped all this sweet food for one slice of his mother's bread. Finally, the prince waved away the dessert tray. He stood up with some effort and waddled to the door.
"I'll show you to your room, Brill."
Prince Grossdere walked through his own large bedroom, where a huge gold bed stood in the center. He opened a door.
"Here is your room."
Brill gasped. "It's beautiful." The wooden bed and chest of drawers were decorated with mother of pearl. A fur rug covered most of the floor. Prince Grossdere opened the wardrobe.
"My last companion was plumper than you, but you can probably wear his clothes until the tailor makes yours."
Brill felt the soft, silky fabric of the brightly colored tunics.
"You'll find a nightshirt in a drawer," said the prince. "Tell Mailpar to throw out your old clothes. They're not suitable for the palace."
Brill nodded.
"Yes, your highness." "Better go to bed. Tomorrow we'll be busy," said the prince. "You'll meet the emperor and the queen. And my sister Florette. Everyone likes her, but I don't like her companion. The best part of tomorrow will be showing you my play park. The maids bring me my breakfast in bed. I'll tell them to wake you so you can eat with me."
The prince left, and Brill pulled a silky robe from a drawer. He liked the smooth feel of the cloth next to his skin. He looked around for somewhere to hide his homespuns. He couldn't throw out the clothes his mother had made. He finally stuffed them in the bottom drawer of a chest of drawers under an extra blanket. He hoped no one would find them there. Then Brill crawled into the soft bed. He felt as if he were lying on a cloud, one of the fluffy white ones that looked like cotton. How fast his life had changed. He ached to be home again with his mother and grandfather. He tried to guess why the prince's former companion left all his fancy clothes. Maybe he had outgrown them, or the prince was so stingy he wouldn't let them take them, or perhaps... But he fell asleep before he finished the thought. Brill awoke early the next morning. Everything was quiet. He missed the sounds of home, the cockerel crowing, mother building a fire, grandfather still snoring. Brill walked to the window and peeked out between the green velvet curtains. A thick forest of tall evergreens surrounded a clearing. In the middle stood a stone building enclosed by a wall. He wondered what it was. To the left was the moat. He shuddered at the thought of the man eating Dragators. Brill picked an orange tunic from the wardrobe. The shoulders hung halfway to his elbows, and he tied a cord around his waist to make it fit a little better. He pulled on a pair of white hose. The shoes with curly pointed toes were much too big, so Brill slipped on his old leather sandals. What would the children at school say if they could see his fine clothes? He grinned as he imagined walking through the town, surprising everyone. He opened the door to the landing and stepped out. No one seemed to be stirring. Apparently, people in palaces slept longer than people on farms. Brill longed for some fresh air. He crept to the end of the landing where he found a stairway. He tiptoed down. At the bottom, he saw halls leading in different directions, and he had an uneasy feeling if he went much farther, he wouldn't be able to find his way back. "Are you lost?" Brill jumped and turned to see a blonde girl, a head shorter than he. She had a turned-up nose and saucy blue eyes.
"I'm not lost,"
he answered. "Are you the prince's new companion?"
He nodded. "I'm Brill. Who are you?"
"Segra, Princess Florette's companion. Want to see the gardens?"
"Yes," he answered. "When do people get up around here?"
"The members of the royal family usually sleep until noon, but I don't mind. I like having some time to myself. If you think being agreeable, cheerful, and amusing all the time is easy, you'll soon find out differently."
"I never wanted to come here," Brill whispered.
"Don't let anyone else hear you say that," warned Segra. She led the way down the halls, making several turns until she came to a door. She pushed it open, and they stepped out into the gardens. Brill breathed deeply of the sweet-scented air.
"The fresh air makes me hungry."
"Let's walk to the orchard. The peaches are ripe." The orchard was at the end of the formal gardens. Brill picked a peach and bit into its juicy sweetness. Segra ate one too. Brill didn't have a handkerchief, so he wiped his sticky hands on some leaves.
"It certainly tastes good to eat something not covered with chocolate."
"Don't let the prince hear you say that."
"Can't I have any opinions of my own? Do I have to agree with everything the prince says?"
"You'll live longer if you do."
What do you mean by that? What happened to the boy who was here before me?
They fed him to the Dragators.
But why? Why would they kill a boy?
They said he had rebel thoughts. An icy shiver ran up Brill's spine.
Now he knew why the other boy's clothes were left hanging in the wardrobe.
We have dangerous jobs, but if we help each other, we may survive. Segra led the way into the forest.
I don't see how. I've got lots of rebellious thoughts. I'm bound to say the wrong thing.
I didn't mean to make you nervous, but I thought you should know about the danger.
Segra sat down on a fallen log. Brill sat beside her.
The royal family are scared of the people, and the people are scared of them, continued Segra. The emperor's trying to make himself secure with more and more soldiers, but that only makes the people more resentful and dangerous. If he treated everyone more kindly, he wouldn't have so much to fear.
Brill said, Can't someone make him see that?
No, because the emperor won't listen to advice. He has a council, but they only suggest things that they know the emperor will like. Nobody will risk making him angry.
I wish they had never picked me to move to the palace. I wonder if I'll ever see Mother and Grandfather again.
Brill's voice trembled as he thought of home. Segra whispered, I've been here for 2 years, but I still get homesick. We didn't have soft beds or much food at home, or any of the palace comforts, but I'd go back in a minute if I could.
What village did you come from?
It wasn't exactly a village. It was a settlement high on one of the border mountains. When the emperor took over the kingdom and took away the people's freedom, some of the people from our village escaped to the mountains.
What did you eat?
Goat's milk and cheese. We ground the seeds of wild grasses and made flour for bread. We grew root crops. It was a hard life, but the soldiers and gatherers didn't bother us.
Brill said, We lived on a farm, and we had to give most of the stuff we grew to the gatherers. It wasn't fair.
Segra stood and stretched. We'd better get back to the palace before we're missed.
Brill stood too. If you lived way up in the mountains, how'd they pick you to be Princess Florette's companion?
Father sent me to school in the village in the winter. All the girls took a test, and the next thing I knew, I was summoned to the palace. I didn't even get time to say goodbye to my mother and father.
That's terrible.
Father says God has a plan for our lives, so maybe I've been put here for a reason. The emperor may say God doesn't exist, but that doesn't make it true. I know he does.
She glanced nervously around.
We'd better hurry. Oh, and when we're introduced later today, pretend you haven't seen me before. We don't want to be accused of plotting against the emperor.
I'm too scared to do any plotting.
But our only hope is helping the rebels.
Segra's whisper was so low, Brill had to bend his head close to hear. He felt his blood grow cold. Do you know some rebels?
Segra countered with another question. Do you want King Talder to be king again? Brill shivered. What if Segra had been sent to test his loyalty?
Why are you asking?
I have to know how you feel. I think I can trust you, but I have to be sure.
Brill looked at Segra's clear blue eyes. He whispered, I don't remember King Talder. My grandfather said things were better then.
I know where King Talder is.
Where?
He's in the prison in the forest. He's very weak. If we bring him extra food, maybe he'll be able to regain his strength so we can help him escape.
We? Brill gulped. But if anyone gets caught helping a prisoner, he'll be fed to the Dragators.
Segra pressed her lips together, then said, I would do anything to see King Talder ruling again. My parents talked about how happy everyone was then.
Brill and Segra walked out of the forest together and through the orchard. Brill looked around, hoping no one had heard Segra's rash words. He felt cold sweat oozing from his pores as he remembered the Dragator's sharp teeth. He made up his mind to keep away from Segra. Nearing the palace door, she whispered,
Will you meet me again tomorrow morning?
No, I don't think the prince will want me prowling around.
The prince will never know. He sleeps until noon.
I can't promise to meet you, Segra.
But I need your help.
You'll have to find somebody else.
Brill opened the door and Segra led the way back to his room. He went inside and closed the door. Now that he realized his life hung by a precarious thread, Brill was determined not to do anything to upset Prince Grossdere. No one would suspect him of rebellious thoughts. End of chapter 3.